Hi, my name is Brenda Titus, and I'm a professional hypnotist in Orange County, California. For information about myself and my programs, including in-person sessions, please feel free to go to my website, ochypnotherapy.com. Today's Thoughts from the Hypnosis Office is going to be from problem to possibility. So obviously people come to me because there's some sort of challenge or problem in their lives, and it can be a variety of things that are going on. Sometimes it's an emotional issue, a relationship issue, a fear, a habit, but somehow it comes down to there's something I'm not satisfied in my life with. I have a problem, and they feel that hypnosis would be of help to them to resolve it. One of the challenges with having problems is that we can get very heavily focused on our problems. And the reality is that often people, by the time it occurs to them to call the hypnotist, they have dealt with their problem for quite some time. In fact, unfortunately, sometimes people think of hypnosis as kind of, maybe they've thought about, well, first they've dealt with the problem for a long time. They've talked to their friends and their family. Maybe they've gone to a traditional therapist or a doctor, and finally they've thought, maybe a hypnotist. So obviously we try to be closer up on the top of the list, and that is getting better throughout the days, and that's part of the goal with even doing these videos and doing some promotion and talking about how hypnosis can be helpful. But like I said, so people in their problem state, they might have really been dealing with their problem for quite some time. Now, the challenge, of course, when we're dealing with a problem for so long, is we can get so stuck in that problem state. So people come to me and they are in a problem state. Now, one of the things that I was really thinking about when I was thinking about the idea of going from problem to possibility, actually, as I was first doing my outline, as I was thinking about it, is that at first I went from problem to recovery. And it occurs to me that life is a process, and there's very few things that we think about as being, fully over. I mean, I guess there are different things, that we kind of, have a problem and then it's done and it's over. Oftentimes there's some sort of residual to it. So when do we say I've recovered or I'm done, I'm over some challenge? And so I realized that recovery didn't really feel like the right word. And so I actually decided that I really wanted to think about it from this idea of possibility. And so as we go from problem state to possibility state, there's the more likely process that we're going to end up with as we're working through challenges, which is the progress state. So my big goal, especially early in the first couple of sessions that I'm working with somebody, is to help them get out of the problem state, out of the belief that their problem is so big and so challenging that they can't even see beyond life beyond having that problem, that challenge. And so that's really when we're really working through the meat of our work together is the progress state. And so, some days are going to be better than others when we're working through our challenges, especially if we're working through maybe an ongoing challenge, an ongoing relationship challenge, an ongoing health challenge, or whatever the situation is. So we're more likely working through making progress on overcoming the problem. And I was reminded on one of my workouts that we always want to be aware of making progress. So that you'll commonly hear the phrase progress, not perfection. And so I like to think about that. And then, of course, as we continue through our process, then we really want to be aware of opening for the possibilities. What is life beyond this problem? And that's where we get to that possibility state, and really being aware of. Well, originally I'd written on recovery, and I said, well, what does recovery even mean? So that's part of why when we think about as possibility, so what is life beyond maybe a weight challenge and all the possibilities people talk about, having more energy, more the fun that they get to have, being able to move better, the clothing, the travel, maybe, things that we get to do when we just feel more comfortable in our own skin. And so we also want to identify, as we're doing our work, well, what are the possibilities that we get to open beyond this problem, and life beyond this problem, and the things that we get to make possible. So like I said, we have to be really aware then of the progress state, because the progress state ultimately is where we're really doing our work on a regular, that's life. Life is about progress and that progress state. And especially for ongoing challenges, sometimes it can be very frustrating. We'll plateau maybe on a challenge, or we'll have a big push on a challenge and then we'll plateau, or maybe we'll even go down a bit for a while. And so it is really important to have a good attitude throughout that, which I've talked about on other videos as well. So I wanted to share a phrase that we like to use in the hypnosis world that can really help us kind of get back on track and remembering that we are in that progress state. And this comes from a hypnotist, Emile Coué. And the phrase that we like to use, I like to take a breath before I say it, is, every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. And it's such a simple phrase, but I will tell you, it is one that is said within my household quite frequently, as my husband and I both are very familiar. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. And it kind of hits all those notes, right? Whether we're dealing with a mental challenge, a physical challenge, even if it's, some days, when they say, well, as long as we're, not 6 feet under, that's a good day. Sometimes I got out of bed. Sometimes people will say, well, how are you? And I'll say, well, I'm here, because maybe that's as good even as I have. I have my hard days too. I always remind you guys. And so it is kind of that good way of saying, okay, I'm making progress. I'm in my progress state. And of course, then that opens us up to the possibilities instead of being so focused on the problem. So every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. And I want you to really take that phrase and think about that and focus on it. And you can repeat it, or you can even kind of stop and be aware of maybe reactions or thoughts or feelings associated with how that feels to even say that to yourself. And can be a really good kind of auto thought that comes to you every day. In every way, I'm getting better and better. And I will be very honest, I have had a few surgeries over the last few years, and this phrase, every day in every way I'm getting better and better, always brings me back to my resource state, my progress state, instead of focusing on the problem and the challenge, which when I'm in my resource state, when I'm in my progress state, I'm focusing on the possibility instead of the problem. And isn't that a good place to focus on the possibilities? So with that, I thank you for joining me. I hope that this has been a helpful thing for you to think about today. And I hope that this mantra, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better, will help you move from your idea, your attitude, your feeling, your sense of being beyond the problem state towards the progress state, and certainly opening up the idea of the possibility state for you. And with that, I wish you a wonderful week.